big six are have been obviously privatised by the Tory government over a number of decades. What we've seen in Scotland is that the Scottish government have protected the industries that we do have in public hands, such as Scottish Water, which is still a public body. We've re-established ScotRail as a public franchise now that's publicly owned. And the direction of travel is wherever these essential services should be, they should be in public hands. Would I like to see these companies, stopping making massive profits at the expense of people? Then absolutely, but I think it's a bit more complex than that just now. The energy companies themselves, the retail energy companies, are very different from the energy generation companies. And I think one of the things that we've missed out on through Westminster mishandling of Scottish resources since the 1970s, oil and gas and so forth, is what Norway has done, which is to set up state-owned industries such as Statoil and Statkraft, who are now coming to Scotland to look to invest because they've got so much money in their sovereign wealth fund, more than £1 trillion in the sovereign wealth fund there. So a massively rich fund, which is for the benefit of their people here. And we should have had something like that. So I would like to see us in the future move towards having state-owned energy companies. I think it's going to be very difficult the way the UK market has been broken down and privatised to look at the existing situation and say, how do you bring those back in? I think that's a mammoth task. So I think work has to be done on it. If I could say, Labour's plans for GB Energy are a complete and utter fudge. They keep talking about an energy generating company, but as we found out today, there's their manifestos being launched. This is purely as what they describe as an investment vehicle for private companies and others to take forward their investments in energy. It won't be generating any electricity, despite what Anna Sarwar has said publicly on TV. That's not the way to do it. I don't think that's something we could do. But I think one of the things I would like to see is that with the powers of independence, I think we would have the ability to start from scratch and say, let's create our own sovereign wealth fund. Let's look at a properly invested fund for starting our own state-owned energy company, so that we can get the right kinds of results for people, which is ultimately lower energy bills. If I could just go on this one wee bit for you, one of the campaigns I've been running over the past year is for a Highland energy rebate. At the moment, people across the Highlands and Islands pay 50% more for their electricity standing charges than people in London. Now, that's despite us having a colder climate, needing to use more electricity, having more people off the gas grid, and having the highest levels of fuel poverty across the UK. That's wholly reserved to the UK government. So we've got that position where we've got this real inequity over pricing and bills that you and others are having to pay here. But we're getting, despite that's, by the way, despite generating more than 4 times the electricity from renewable sources that we actually use here. So that's clearly an unfair situation. And I would like to see in the short term a rebate coming back to people in their houses to help them with their bills here, to when it's really difficult to struggle through that in the winter and even in the colder months like June, as we've just seen, when people have to put the heating on. But also in the longer term, I think with the powers of independence, we should be able to make sure that we're taking the right decisions to set up the kinds of infrastructure that we want to see. But keeping things in public hands and wherever possible, having essential services in public hands is a direction of travel that I think we should have for Scotland.
Thanks, Drew. Peter.
Yeah, I think Drew's spot on. There's no beware simple solutions to massively complicated, elongated processes, right? So the energy company breakup is now coming up for like 30 years ago, and it's going to take you a really long time to repair that. I mean, there are 2 very simple things that you could do, but no individual MP is going to be able to get it through. The first thing you could do is you could just pass a law that you can either have dividends to shareholders or you can have state subsidy, but you can't have both. So you don't, you can either pay out, your profits to your shareholders, or you can take state subsidies, and that's it. The second thing you could do is introduce an offshoring tax. So any money that goes offshore in it of any amount, you pay a levy on it. But getting that through would be nigh on impossible, and that still wouldn't solve the fact that it was in, private hands, and that it's a massively complicated, regulated sector where the regulation has basically failed. In an ideal world, I'd love to see them taken back and worked almost like cooperatives and have local, the Highland Energy Company that could do with that, because it's absolutely enraging to see Scotland producing 113% of our energy, sending it down south and then being charged to send it back again is absolutely mind-blowingly annoying. But it is kind of out of the purview of any one MP. Drew's right to lobby for that state well sector, but most of the brakes on this sort of economic activity are because Westminster understood when they made the devolution settlement that they were going to put those brakes on because Scotland would run ahead of them. England, and I know because I grew up there, is pretty resource poor in terms of water and wind. It does have some tidal, okay, and it does have some solar. And if we don't tackle climate change, it's going to have a hell of a lot more solar. But that's not, it's not good enough, is it? So, yeah, beware simple solutions to massively complicated problems. But in an ideal world, yeah, sure, I'd love to see them brought back into public ownership.
That's great. Thanks, Peter. Rudy.
Well, yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And obviously, energy prices have fallen 63% since their peak. And what we have in our manifesto is a commitment to review standing charges to make sure that people aren't going to be paying more, and keep that under review through the term of the Parliament. Now, what I think we can be doing to really sort of help make things easier for people and alleviate some of the cost of living is, we've committed to not having further green levies. We've acknowledged the cost of generating renewable energies has fallen significantly, and we're looking to have that reflected in people's bills. So, that should go a long way to making sure that people keep more of the money that they earn. But, a couple of the other points raised by Peter Andrews to do with the energy generated here in Highland, and it is getting taken out of Highland. And I think, one of the big issues when it comes to, renewable energies and renewable energy transmission is, the routing of pylon lines, the sort of constant drive by the Scottish Government to have these massive wind farms. We're seeing 200-metre tall wind farms coming into our community.
Wait a minute, the network is actually reserved to the UK, Rudy.
Yeah, we're not allowed. That's the whole point. We can't have our energy generation. It's not the Scottish Parliament. These are private companies that are making them. We're not in control of that.
If I'm allowed to finish my point, what I was going to say was, what I'm hearing when I'm out speaking to people is that these wind turbines and these pylons, which are being pushed by the Scottish Government, by the Energy Consensus Unit, and this is a big issue that I'm hearing day in, day out. My inbox is full of concerns about this. We have a commitment to have a review of this with a presumption towards the undergrounding of these transmission infrastructures, which will make life a lot better for our communities who are facing real anxiety about some of this transmission infrastructure when we're working towards a transition. But to answer your question, I'm not convinced that is the solution to it. We're seeing, as I said, that 63% reduction in energy costs since the peak. So, I think what we are doing is working. What we're proposing to do in the coming parliamentary term will see money come off people's energy bills.